Hey, what's going on? Chris here from MIXDOWN Online. Now, this is going to be the last video of this series on the FADERPORT 16. I'm going to leave the link in the description down below if you want to watch the first two videos. Now, in this video, I'm still talking about the integration of the FADERPORT 16 with Cubase. And on this one, we are going to talk about how to control our send levels with the FADERPORT 16 and Cubase, and also how we can control plugins, and this is quite interesting. Let's continue our journey on looking at the integration of the FADERPORT 16 with Cubase. Now, in the last video, we looked at the control part of the FADERPORT 16, all those features found on the right and also on the left. We looked at all the faders, and we are going to start with the fader modes right here on top. So first, when we click on track, that is going to set our FADERPORT with level faders. It's kind of the default value for the FADERPORT 16. So just to control the levels of your channels, this is how the faders are going to be set up by using track. Now, there's a time code written right underneath the track button here. And this works with Cubase also. Okay, so I'm going to activate it, and to do so, I'm just going to click on Shift on the right shift of the FADERPORT and click on track. And now the last four channels, this is where you're going to see the time code. Now the bars, the beats, the sub beats, basically all time code data are going to be listed on the last four channels display. So this is what I have here if I click on play. So I have my time code displayed right here on top. Okay, so to deactivate that, again, just click on the right shift, click back on track, and you're going to be back to its original state. Okay, now let's look at I'm just going to go down 2 steps and click on sends. By clicking on sends, now the faders will control the amount of send level I am sending to my send channels. So let's just go and open the Mix console window, and I'm just going to open my sends tab. For example, if I select my snare channel. Now I have on my FADERPORT 16, I have my, I think I only have one send right now, so it's right here. Okay, so my send level is right here. So I can just simply bring it down with the first fader of the FADERPORT, and that is automatically assigned to the first reverb, the first send of this channel, of the selected channel. If I had more than one send, I would be able to do the same with the second one, which I don't have right now. But let's just load one other send here to the same effect. Doesn't matter much. And there you go. Now I'm able to just to bring up and down the amount of signal I want to send to that reverb channel. I can also activate the sends by clicking on the last 8 channels of the FADERPORT. So channel 9 is going to be the first send, the first on and off of send number 1. Same for fader number 10, which is going to bring on or off the second send of the selected channel. Okay, very simple, and so on. So if I had more than 2 sends, I would be able to activate them with the last 8 faders of the FADERPORT. Now the first 8 faders are going to be for levels, the send levels. Now if I go and click on the actually turn down by 1 notch, okay, that pan knob right here on the top left of the FADERPORT, just by 1 click, I'm going to get into other settings, the pre and post fader option, okay, found on the first 8 channels of the FADERPORT. So if I want to just bring that first send as a pre-fader send, I just need to touch that one fader, bring it up one notch, and that's it. You know, if I'm bringing down that first fader, it's going to get back to post fader mode. Okay, very practical. So again, one for each sends. Okay, so 1 through 8. Then the last, if I look at the last 8 channels from the second page, now this will select other routing options that I have for my send. So if I look, I have all those options here that I can route my signal to, and I can just browse through them by using one of the last 8 faders. So if I want to change the destination of where I want to send my signal from the first send slot, I can just turn up and down fader number 9, and that will take care of that. Okay, so that's another way of doing it. So this is what I get for sends. Okay, if I want to get back to the first page, I'm just going to turn the knob to the left just one notch, and I'm going to be back to the first page. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to track, and I am back to my original state, to the track mode. Now let's look at the pan option. I'm going to click on pan. Now all the faders will manage the panning. So instead of using the pan knob every time I want to do some automation, like panning automation on my channels, I can use a fader. So if we look at, let's say the floor tom right here, I can just, by bringing up and down that fader, move from left to right, move the panning from left to right. So very, very practical, especially to do some automation, panning automation. So this is by activating the pan. Now let's look at the edit plugin option. I'm going to click on edit plugin once to activate the edit plugin feature of the FADERPORT. And this is quite interesting, actually. So let's select, for example, the snare. Okay, I'm going to select the snare drum, and what I have here on my FADERPORT, if I look on the fader number 9 of the FADERPORT, it's written right here on top on the display, FX number 1, which is the first slot of my inserts. Okay, so now on my first slot, I have the FabFilter Pro Q3. Okay, so I'm going to open the plugin, and this is what I have right here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go to page 2 by turning just by one notch the pan knob. And that will give me access to all the parameters of the FabFilter Pro Q. So if I move the first fader, there you go, I'm going to get a bit more gain. If I click on the second one, what else do I have? There's a bit of things to... Oh, this is the output level. Okay, so if I click right here, oh yeah, there you go. So now I have my output level right here. So pretty nice here. Okay, so there's a bit of experimentation to do when you open a plugin and you start editing the plugin. So now, okay, on and off for this frequency band. Again, now I can also, let me check here. If I go to the second page, what else do we have here? Okay, I have my cue for this frequency band and different types of frequency shapes. Nice. Okay, so this is how you can edit your plugin. So let's go and look at the second plugin on this channel, which is the... Oh yeah, the Nembrini. This is a very good one, the Nembrini PSA 1000. That is the equivalent of the SansAmp found in Pro Tools. Okay, so let's work with this one. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to go back to the first page. And, okay, back to the first page. I'm going to go back to channel number 9, which is going to allow me to select which plugin I want to work on. So right now it's set up to FX number 1. I'm just going to bring up that fader just one notch, and now it's going to be set up to work on plugin number 2, again out of my snare drum. So if I go back on track, I have my snare drum selected. Okay, back to edit plugins, and so I'm going to choose the second FX. All right, so now I have my Nembrini plugin. Go back to page. I'm going to go to page 1 again by turning by one notch the pan knob right on top. And there you go. Now I have access to all of my parameters to the tip of my fingers. Okay, very, very cool. Okay, so now and this is a very easy plugin, pretty straightforward to work with by using the fader port. So again, for automation or just, trying to find your sound, if you just don't want to use your mouse, it is very practical to use the faders instead. Now this plugin, I think, only has one page, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So some plugins with less parameters will have less pages to customize. So like this one, it only has one page. There's, oh yeah, look at that. Okay. Different default values here. And we have bypass if we want to bypass the plugin. There's a fader to do so. So there you go. So this is how you can edit a plugin. Now let's look at the channel settings window. I'm going to open my channel settings window and work on the equalizer of the channel settings window. And this is pretty cool because if I go back on track and I want to activate the channel settings window or the EQ out of Cubase, out of the channel strip to be edited by the fader port, the only thing I need to do is to click twice on edit plugins. And now I'm going to be able to edit the channel strip of Cubase, which is very cool. All right, so now let's go and start with the EQ. So what I have here, I can manage, if you look at the bottom here, okay, with my the first fader, I'm able to move the frequency. I'm just going to activate the band, and there you go. And actually, I think there's even a command here to activate a band. Okay, so I'm going to find it. So if I click on select, okay, by clicking on select, it's going to jump to the Q. Okay, now look at this. Now I have the gain on the second fader. If I click on select, that will activate or deactivate that band. If I click on the first fader, which is the frequency selection, if I click on select, now this is going to activate the Q. Okay, pretty cool. The only thing I don't have access to is to manage the shape of the frequency band. Okay, so let's activate the second one. There you go. And again, I'm able to, in a very fast way, to work on what I need for this EQ. Okay, now let's work on the channel strip itself with all the other plugins apart from the EQ. And I can also control those plugins with the FADERPORT 16. So I'm going to click 3 times on Edit Plugins. And now I am in the channel strip. So if I want to get to the compressor, I need to move the first fader, which is going to bring me from one section to another of the channel strip window. So if I click on saturation, for example, I have that activated right now. On the third fader, I think this is where I'm going to be able to select which kind of saturation plugin I want to work with. So let's go with the tube one. And there you go, the tube saturation is going to get activated right away. From that point on, I can go to the second page of this plugin to enter the edit page of the plugin. So I can work on the parameters of this, the tube saturation plugin, part of the channel strip. Now I have my drive right here on the first fader. By bringing down the second fader, I'm working on the output level and the low frequency and high frequency values on the third and fourth faders for this one. Okay, I'm going to go back to the first page and let's go for a compressor. We were talking about compression earlier, so let's go and select compressor. And then using the third fader, I'm going to select the compressor I want to work with. So let's go with the vintage one. And there you go, the vintage compressor is open. Let's open it full screen. And now I'm going to go to page 2 by, again, moving the pan knob to the right 1 notch. And there you go. Now I am directly into the parameters of my compressor. Okay, I have my input level, the output level, then what else do I have? The attack time, release, okay? And it's pretty easy because it's written right here on the display. On top we have input, output, attack, and release. Now, basically from my understanding, it is going to give me access to those parameters found directly on the channel strip and not in full screen version, okay? So just pay attention to this. If I'm editing the plugin itself from an insert plugin, I'm going to have way more control. Now, there's something I want to show you that you need to pay attention to when working in edit plugin mode and in sans mode. If we go in Cubase and go to Studio, down to Studio Setup, and we'll go to Mackie Control 1 and 2, and look, there's an option here that in my case by default was checked on, and it's called Enable Auto Select. If I click on Enable Auto Select and I click on OK, this is what's going to happen. Let me open the mix console. Now, if I touch one fader, it is going to be selected automatically. With that checked on, I don't need to click on select to select a channel. I can only touch a fader and the channel will get selected automatically, which can be practical in a way, you know. But the problem is if I activate edit plugins and I want to, I don't know, let's go to the channel strip and I want to select, you know, a gate or something. Now it's going to select the channel instead of working on my plugin. And it's just going to be held. You're not going to be able to edit any plugins with that mode because it's always going to be selecting the channel that you're touching the fader on, okay? So make sure you don't have that selected, and same for sans. You'll not be able, you're going to have a hard time to, you know, it's always going to go back to that channel, that selected channel. So it's going to be impossible to work on your send levels with that mode. So to fix that, if that is activated by default, just go to Studio Setup. Make sure that from the Mackie Control 1 and 2, make sure that the Enable Auto Select is on check. And that will fix that. Okay, let's go and continue because we have like the last features that we need to look at before we finish this video. Okay, next we have audio. So if we click on audio, this is going to give us access to the master out, okay, the inserts of the master out. Again, we can edit the plugins out of the master out, which is not accessible if I only click on, if I only select the master out. It's not going to be available on the FADERPORT. So if I want to access the plugins and to edit those plugins that are inserted on the master out, I need to click on audio, and that will give me access to edit the plugins. Then we have MIDI, which is there's nothing there according to the manual, and you know, I was testing that out also, and yeah, nothing is there at the moment. Now bus is basically to be able to access a plugin, an inserted plugin off an effects channel track. Not very useful since we can only select that effects channel track ourselves and click on edit plugins, and that is going to do the same with way more control. And then by clicking on VCA, that will bring the mix console or the project window depending on where you are at the moment you're clicking on VCA. Okay, so it's basically the switch between the mix console and arrange window. And then all is going to bring up the channel settings window. Super, super useful. I use that all the time. Okay, so if I go back to track and I click on all, which is going to bring up the channel settings window, I can just select any channels I want directly from the FADERPORT, and my channel settings window is going to stay open, and I'll be able to go from one channel to the other if I need to work with the channel strip, for example, or the equalizer, or you know, routing my my sands. Okay, working with the panning of the sands, or you know, inserts, sands and stuff. I just want to go from one channel to another in a very fast and quick way. This is very practical to do so. Okay, so this all option here is awesome. So this is what we get with the integration of the FADERPORT 16 and Cubase 10.5. This is the version I was working on for these videos. Honestly, I'm very impressed of the job that Presonus did, you know, for the integration of the FADERPORT with Cubase. There's some stuff that can actually have the potential of being worked on. There's some space for improvement, but honestly, up to now, it's quite impressive that they went that far, you know, especially by being able to edit the plugins and stuff in a very easy way. I kind of like that. But good job, Presonus. Really enjoying working with the FADERPORT 16. So there you go, my friends. If this is something that you want to know more about, you can check my other videos that I made on the FADERPORT 16, my review video, and also the first part of the walkthrough of the integration of FADERPORT 16 with Cubase video also. That is going to be listed in the description down below. All right, my friends, so this is going to be it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, share and like the video. And if you're new here on the channel, please consider subscribing to the channel and clicking the notification bell so you don't miss anything. All right, my friends, so take care, and until next time, see you.